Let's pull up the first story, and this is the one that actually kind of freaks me out. From Timcast.com, Rittenhouse jury was recorded outside of the courthouse, trial judge says. Wisconsin judge Bruce Schroeder announced that someone had recorded the jury in Kyle Rittenhouse's trial getting off the bus this morning. The identities of the 18 members of the jury have been sealed and kept anonymous during the trial. On the morning of November 9th, someone was observed recording the group before they arrived by bus. Quote, at pickup, there was someone there and video recording the jury, which officers approached the person and required them to delete the video and return the phone to him. Schroeder said, I've instructed that if it happens again, they are to take the phone and bring it here. Something like that should not have occurred. I'm frankly quite surprised it did. The news comes shortly after Cortez Rice, George Floyd's nephew, said in a live stream that he knew there were cameras in the courtroom and that they were, quote, definitely people taking pictures of the jury and everything. Jury selection was difficult because the case extensive media coverage. At least 12 potential jurors were dismissed because they acknowledged they had strong feelings about the case. By November 2nd, 20 people had been selected, including 9 men and 11 women. Of the selected group, 12 would serve as jurors while 8 were alternates. Safety concerns were expressed by jury members during the selection process and mentioned fears of riots following the verdict. One juror was dismissed after making a joke. A second juror was dismissed last week due to an issue with her pregnancy. Quote, Rittenhouse is on trial for fatally shooting 2 men and wounding a third. I think, for the most part, we know a lot of the details about Rittenhouse and the trial, but we'll get into more about the trial details in a second. This is where I think this is where Kyle could lose. So we've been talking quite a bit about the trial. We've been talking about how for the past several days, and the latest news today is that the prosecution they've rested their case, or however the proper terminology is. Their case has been rested. And now it's going into the defense's case in chief. They're now bringing in their witnesses. They brought in the state. So I know, Steve, you haven't been following this, but I'll give you some context. The state brought in Richie McGinnis. It was their witness, and he made them look miserable. He said, this guy was attacking Kyle. They brought in another witness who said one of the guys who got shot threatened to kill Kyle. And then they bring in Gage Grosskreutz, who testified that it wasn't until he pointed his gun at Kyle Rittenhouse that he got fired upon. After seeing all of that, my answer is like, wow, my prediction is like he's probably going to get acquitted on most of these charges. He might get a misdemeanor gun charge. He might get a manslaughter charge, but all the murder stuff, it's all out the window. Then we hear that somebody is filming the jury, and we know what that leads to.
It's an amazing story. And actually, just as I'm sitting here listening to you and we were just talking about it, I'm seeing why it's so interesting. And how you've got this situation where there's a narrative, and the narrative has to be upheld at all costs. This is what happens with the media, as we know. And yet the facts just one by one start to chip away at it. And when you talk about the jury, I mean, that's really scary. Why is that even allowed to happen? I mean, what are the details of that in terms of like where they were filmed, and shouldn't they have
the bus pickup?
More, yeah, but
the jury's being picked up.
How
by
do they
the
know
deputies.
where that is? What's that about?
Right. So we have this viral video where they're basically saying, we know who the jury is. This guy. It sounds like he's saying if the jury doesn't give them the verdict they want, they're going to target them. And we saw that during the Chauvin trial with the George Floyd cop, Derek Chauvin. They were rioting in the streets. People had to be brought into the courtroom with armed police. One of the witnesses' houses was covered in blood, like a pig's head or something, but he had moved from there. But they're targeting the jury and the witnesses.
They should treat targeting jurors as targeting children for legal purposes. I'd love to see people
but there must be some
hammer down.
There must be big. I mean, when the judge says, "Oh, I'm surprised," and what did he say? Disappointed. I don't know what he said.
I'm surprised this happened.
I mean, yeah. to put it mildly. I mean, isn't there? To your point, isn't there a? Isn't this a crime?
He doesn't get it.
Intimidating a jury is
obstruction of justice,
isn't it? I don't know. I mean, I'm absolutely miles from being a lawyer. There must be something.
It's interesting that he's surprised because I'm not. If you're looking at this story online on social media, there's a whole bunch of people threatening the jury. There's a whole people threatening that there's going to be rioting. There's going to be huge protests in response if they don't get the decision that they want to get in this specific trial. So, I mean, he shouldn't be surprised because this is a high-profile case that the world is watching right now, this is going to be significant because you see the party line split, you see the agendas, you see the narratives, and people are playing this off as a part of the larger political wars that are happening in this country that are becoming more dangerous to be played.
I think it's sad to see the judge really doesn't know what's going on. And it's not a judge's job to watch the news and understand politics in this country. But for him to be like, oh, somebody was filming the jury, that's strange. It's like, yo, these people were burning down buildings, smashing windows, and they were pushing a flaming dumpster towards a gas station. And this judge doesn't understand that these are political extremists.
Well, you don't know that the people doing that were the people filming. But I mean, the fact is that that it was filmed at all by anyone is so like antithetical to everything that people think about how the justice system should work.
Yeah,
and
but
so
these
on.
people,
and actually, there's a broader point to your point, which is that
they're revolutionaries.
They keep saying over and over again, going back to the narrative, that the right and the Trumpists and whatever are sort of undermining democracy and threatening violence and all this kind of stuff. It's the exact opposite on so many occasions, and it reminds me actually of the. Do you remember around the election night when it was always about when they were boarding up the cities?
Yeah.
Everyone's like boarding up. You had those pictures of New York being boarded up in the event that there would be rioting on the election night. Well, who were they boarding it up against?
Yeah, there's not a lot of Trump supporters in New York.
And it's
relatively.
the same sort of story. It's always it's actually the louder they push a particular message, the more clear it is that actually is the direct opposite of what's really going on.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, Russiagate. Everything the Democrats were saying, they were projecting what they had done on Trump and Trump supporters. When it comes to the violence, all day, every day, the media keeps saying the right wing and the far right and the white supremacists. And it's just like, where, when? I mean, there's been a couple of bad, really, really bad incidents with the fringe far right or whatever. But it's like you get Antifa riots with 100+ days of them firebombing a federal building. And yet... Yeah. We now know at the Rittenhouse trial, the FBI had evidence that these people had committed crimes, that the prosecutor in the Rittenhouse case knew that one of Kyle Rittenhouse's attackers was illegally concealing a weapon. And the prosecutors instructed the police not to execute a search warrant against his phone. I mean, the whole thing is crooked, and it's always been crooked. And the scariest part about it is that when they come out and they lie about it, or more importantly, when the judge doesn't understand, he's like, wow, I'm surprised someone was filming our jury. It's like, Your Honor, they will kill the jurors if they have the opportunity. But I will stress that is hyperbolic. What these people do, because they're smarter than this, as much as people don't want to give them credit, is they know that in order to effectively engage in terror, you can't take life. What the far left does is sustained low-tier terrorism. Smashing windows, starting fires, beating people. Things that won't get national headlines, but will scare people into bending the knee and giving into their politics. So when Antifa can go out for 100+ days in Portland, smashing windows and beating people, is guy gets punched in face a national headline? No. So Antifa and these far-left extremists know they can go out, punch random people. Those people will then become scared to say anything because no one will tell their story and the police won't do anything about it. Then Antifa is emboldened and the far leftists keep doing more and more stuff like this. So what the purpose of filming the jury isn't actually to cause them harm. It's to cause the fear of harm.
The fear. No, it's a total intimidation tactic.
And
no,
especially,
it's incredibly scary that's actually, I mean, that's going on. And it sounds like nothing's going to happen.
No. And the judge was like, "Oh, I told him to delete it." And it's like, so they still have the footage. I'll say one thing. I'll throw it to you before I throw it to you, Luke. Yeah. The fear of pain is actually more powerful in torture than the pain itself. So you'll read this about like the CIA torturing people. They know putting the fear that pain is coming is more likely to get you results than actually inflicting pain on someone. When someone's feeling the pain, they're actually like, "Oh, okay, I can endure this." But before they receive it. So filming the jury is basically the threat. They want these people to be living in fear so that they just say, I don't want to stick my neck out for this. Guilty, guilty, guilty.
There was also many instances where the authorities stood down when there was widespread criminality, looting, burning, robbing people, assaulting people, police officers literally standing down, sometimes even seeing the incidences, not doing anything during this hot summer that we had, of course, last year during all the rioting. And, there was even instances where people's civil rights were violated because someone had a different opinion. Police officers said, well, there's a mob here, they're rioting. We have to violate your civil rights because we don't feel like dealing with any problems, with any issues. And we would like to think that public opinion doesn't sway juries, doesn't sway court proceedings. It does as much as money does, because here in the United States, if you have a lot of money, if you have also the public opinion, if you have all the institutions behind you, you could buy a lot of justice.
And the police will always err on the side of whatever's easier. So I said this years ago, and I warned all these back the blue conservatives. If Black Lives Matter or Antifa shows up to your house, the cop is going to look at the mob, look at you, and say it's easier to arrest you in your own home than it is to deal with a violent mob or a riot. And we've actually seen that. There was a guy in Wisconsin. Black Lives Matter shows up to his house. The same group had previously set fire to another house, and they're protesting. The police end up showing up. So this guy in his window brandishes a shotgun at the crowd. The police show up and arrest him to cheers of Black Lives Matter, Antifa, which is funny because they're the defund the police crowd. But when the police are coming and serving them and arresting a guy in his own home because they were protesting him, they cheer for it. That's the power they want. So people need to realize this. The cops will absolutely, with a smile on their face, kick you in the teeth if it means...
Well, I totally agree. It's so funny you say that, because I remember when in the beginning of the pandemic, and you had cops going around, arresting people and being unbelievably aggressive towards
salon
like
owners,
mums with their kids in the playground, whatever, all that stuff. And I say, well, actually, this is just all of this kind of behavior, this kind of authoritarian behavior in any direction is just going to undermine confidence in the police. And we all, you want order, you want the police, that you want everyone to have confidence in it. And when you go around behaving like that, when you're not doing the central job, which is to uphold the law equally with the same kind of approach to everyone, people start to lose confidence, and then everything starts to fall apart. It's actually a real disaster.
It's just about what's easier.
Yeah.
Can two cops who pull up in a squad car deal with 50 angry people throwing stones? No. But can they arrest you? Yes. And then there's nothing to protest anymore.
By the way, on this, can I just ask on the jury thing? Like, would they know that, just on the extent of the intimidation, would they be aware that this happened? I mean, I don't apart think from seeing the person, would they have seen this story? How's it all played out?
So they're not. The jury's instructed not to read news about the case, not to discuss it with anyone. And for the most part, that typically works. They're not sequestered. But there you are getting onto a bus and someone walks up filming you, and you know exactly what that means, because the jurors know that their identities are kept anonymous. They know why their identities are kept secret. So when someone films you, you know it's no longer a secret no matter what the judge says. And these people, like we mentioned in the story, a lot of these people know the full weight of what's going on with the Rittenhouse trial, and they have strong feelings about it. So I think the jury is now...
So you never see the jury. We were talking
Never.
about this. It's all on the trials you can watch the trials, so you never see the jury,
Well,
never know.
you don't want any jury intimidation. I mean, these people are deciding the fate of Kyle, and if some of them are intimidated or harassed or extorted or even bought off, or even, threatened, you have, a legal system that, of course,
it's actually a really shocking story. I mean,
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Now, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.